ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Amtgard Leadership University, our third panel here at Yule 2016. This one we're going to be talking all about teamwork and communication, pretty much how to move past conflict and get back to having fun. What I'm going to ask you to do is spend a quick 30, 60 seconds introducing yourself, talk about who you are, where you're from, maybe any hot items you want to make sure we cover during this one, and we'll make sure we circle back around during the communication part. So without further ado, Shyft.
Hi, my name's Shyft Silentfall. I'm from Grand Duchy of Crystal Groves.
Nice and loud.
And I've got about 3 years in the game right now. And I'm hoping to talk a little bit about how you go about building teamwork, not only just a specific team, but just encouraging teamwork in general, maybe in your park or in your kingdom.
Okay. Yoshi.
I'm Sir Yoshi. I'm a Knight of the Flame here in Crystal Groves. My park is Bitter Coast, and I've served in office a number of times over my 15 year Amtgard career, so looking to see where I can fill in information.
I am Nakis. I have been playing Amtgard for about 2 years now. One of the things I'd like to discuss is conflict resolution, de-escalation of issues and any sort of conflict that people may have when forming a team and working with a team.
Okay. Pharoah?
I am Archduke Pharoah Darkchylde in Grand Duchy of Crystal Groves. I've been playing for about 12, 13 years, and I just want to speak about how to properly communicate with someone even when the teamwork doesn't work as well.
All right, well, thank you. One thing I'm going to ask you to consider is just, I know it's difficult with the way we're sitting at, and I'm right here almost in your face. Just do me a favor and imagine you're talking to the young lady all the way in the back there, okay? So as far as your voice control and stuff like that. We've got a good microphone, that way it's just easier as we move forward. So, Shyft, we'll start with you. You talked about building a team. What is a team, and why would I need to build one?
Okay.
Let's get basic.
Well, I mean, for starters, I think no matter how motivated or talented you are personally, you're never going to get an event done by yourself. You're never going to get a big, cool park quest done by yourself. So first of all, I mean, a team obviously is just a bunch of people working together for a common goal. And for me, teamwork, building a team starts long before I even have a specific thing that I'm trying to build a team for. For me, it starts with just getting to know everybody that I can within the park, within the kingdom, learning who people are and building friendships with them. Because if the very first thing you ever hear from me is, hey, I want you to come do all this work at this event, chances are you're probably going to be like, yeah, I'm not very interested in that. But if I've spent the time and gotten to know you, and I've maybe helped you with some things, and I know where your strengths are, and I come to you and I say, you know, I've seen you're really good at A&S, and at this event we've got an A&S competition coming up, and I think you'd be really good to judge, or maybe shadow judge or something like that. You have a much higher success rate of getting those people to be on your team, because it's not just some random stranger saying, hey, come work for me. It's someone you know. So for me, that's a good first step, is just building relationships in general, even when you have no goal in mind specifically.
So team building really starts long before you even start needing a team.
Yeah.
Pharoah, anything you want to add to that?
Not only before you start, it's about how you interact with people. Until you can realize that you're not the most important person in the team, the most important person is the person who least understands what needs to be done. Because until they figure out what they need to do and how to properly do it, they are your weakest link. So everybody in your team needs to be on the same page with the same goal, and they need to work together so that they help even the person who doesn't understand make sure that everything you want to do in that endeavor is done properly.
So in that sense, it's important that everybody understands what the purpose of the team is and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yoshi, did you want to add anything to that?
I think just that, there's the teams that you build because you have a goal, and then there's sometimes the teams that you end up on that you don't get to pick the people. Because I sometimes think of Amtgard holding office, being an officer of your group. You're part of a team that is trying to lead your group. You don't get to pick who the people elect necessarily. So it's an area where it can be a little extra challenging with communication and building the bridges that the other guys were talking about, because you didn't choose this team necessarily, but you chose to be a part of it. And I think it's important to be able to work with them.
Sure, no, that's an important aspect, especially when you consider, the Monarch, your team gets built for you. Mm-hmm. You have your dream team that maybe everybody's running, and you've got this goal, but all of a sudden, you got about 50% of the team that you were hoping for that's going to run the park with you. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Nakis, Nakis or Nakis?
Nakis.
Nakis. Along that line, let's talk about officers and the leadership team specifically. Any insights on that you want to share?
Part of it just building, since it's already built for you, part of it just comes from trust. People have been elected for a specific reason. Maybe the region's renowned for their work in the ANS community. The Monarch is just that people person. You have to be able to trust them, because you occasionally get that feeling that people want to micromanage each other in their goals. You have the GMR who steps on the toe of the champion, the regent, the champion, Monarch, champion. You always have a few people who want to micromanage, and at the end of the day, the best way to keep your team cohesive is simply to trust them to do what they do best. That's why they're there.
A little bit of faith in the system?
Faith in the people, not so much the system.
Okay. No, fair enough. So Shyft, again, let's stick with the leadership team kind of deal. So I've already got my team. It's been picked for me, things like that. How do I build them into a cohesive team?
Well, that comes down to the second part of the title of the workshop, and that's communication. For me, let's say, like I said before, I have started just getting to know everybody in my park, and I really proactively do that. If I see that there are people just kind of sitting on the sidelines, sometimes I'll just go over and start talking to them. Or I notice somebody's doing real well in the tournament, but I don't know them. I'll go up and say, hey man, you did a great job in single short or whatever it was. So hopefully by the time I get to that, these other people have been elected, enough people know who they are. Hopefully I know them at that point. And then we need to communicate. And I think that needs to happen very regularly and very openly. Facebook is excellent for that. I am on Facebook way too many hours a day. Planning, whether it's events or even when I'm not on Monarchy, I've been known to sometimes just start a group conversation with everybody that's in the Monarchy in my park and be like, guys, I think this is important. We need to address this situation or think about this upcoming thing or whatever it is. And the more you can keep that line open and focused on whatever your particular struggle or goal is at the time, the better that team's going to work out, I think.
Okay. Yoshi?
Yeah, I like the idea of communication. In our group, we have a group chat for our officers so that as things come up that we want to talk about and plan. I'm currently champion, so we've got a sort of a themed plot line that we're running throughout the reign, but that also is going to kind of impact the Monarch's plans, when we're going to do mid-reign, things that we might do at mid-reign, so it impacts our region. So trying to keep everybody on the same page, and Facebook chats are a good way of doing that. Face-to-face meetings are nice. Sometimes they're a little bit harder to pull off, but sometimes either before the park, after the park, or maybe, on a non-park day, we get together and maybe, sit down, have lunch, have dinner, and kind of chew the fat about, what we want to accomplish. And where we are currently in the reign. What's happened, where are we now, where do we want to go?
Okay. So we lived a little bit in utopian society there where we had faith in the people. They elected people that were really talented in what they do, right? And we communicated well, so everybody got right in line and the exact same page, and we're all moving forward. Okay, so back to the real world. Nakis, is conflict inevitable?
Conflict will always happen. You have two people on the planet. They will always argue about something. And it boils down right back to communication. As we communicate with each other about our events, our reigns, what's going on with Amtgard, we sometimes forget that there's something more than just Amtgard at play here. You have people who are working 12, 13, 14-hour shifts, 2 jobs. You have people who want to participate, be in your team, and add to it. And stuff's just going south in real life. And that can help increase some of the conflict simply because of real life. When it comes to trying to keep your team communicating, is trying to understand where they're coming from too, and try to sort that out and help them re-enjoy the game.
Okay, so Pharoah, Nakis pointed out that conflict's going to happen. The reason we're here. So how do I deal with it? Do I have to deal with it?
Oh, you're going to have to. It's inevitable. You got to deal with it. And when you deal with it, the first thing you need to do is put yourself in the other person's shoes. Realize that, yes, we are here for a purpose and a goal, but at the same time, we are human, we are flawed, and we're going to make mistakes. You're going to live with your mistakes, and then upon that, take responsibility for them. Because until you do, you're hurting yourself and your team. So I know that if me and Nakis have a disagreement and it's hurting our team, we have to be adult enough to say, this is our problem. We need to resolve it, and we need to be honest with each other about how we feel and what's our problem. Once we do that, the team building can actually increase because now we have mutual respect. I respect his opinion, he respects mine. We move forward. And until you can actually conversate with someone and understand that they have their opinions, they have their beliefs, you have yours, we're all different, but at the same time, we have a steady goal, and that's what we are trying to achieve, not our own individual agendas.
Yoshi, what do I do when the other person is wrong? Because that sounds nice.
Yeah.
But they're wrong.
Well, I think one of the good things to do is, if you're going to be talking to them face to face, in general, trying to deal with somebody in a conflict area like that, it's more uncomfortable, but it's probably a little bit easier to communicate some of your ideas. One of the things that I think is good is if you're having a disagreement with somebody, if they're saying something, what you want to do is make sure that they feel like they're being listened to. Even if they're not being agreed with, make sure that they feel like you're taking in what they're saying. A lot of times you can kind of not repeat their exact words, but kind of like paraphrase what they're saying to make sure that you're properly understanding what they're saying. Because if somebody says something to you that you think is wrong, but you kind of misheard or didn't understand where they were coming from, kind of get in the conversation, try and break down where they're coming from, and then try and work on which components are wrong and try and rebuild after you've broken it down into its components.
Which I think that really reinforces what you were getting at, Shyft, is if you know people in advance, not only can you avoid the conflict, hopefully, but then you can at least appreciate their perspective a little bit more. So again, just getting to know them.
I have a little bit, if I
Please.
can maybe. Really important, and this is one of the most uncomfortable things for me, is how you handle criticism. In receiving criticism, it's important to be open to that, but how you handle giving criticism. Making sure that you can find a way to talk to this person that you need to criticize in a way that's not going to put their back up, in a way that's not going to sound accusatory, or you're not trying to cause conflict, you're trying to help that person grow, or to help that position or that event grow, or whatever it is that you're criticizing. And for me, again, it helps if you know that person well, you've got a relationship already, they're more likely to be open to you. That's not always the case. Sometimes you just have to kind of work the words around in your head a little bit. A lot of times, like I said, I communicate via Facebook, and that can be a blessing and a curse. Mm-hmm. It's very easy. You can get right on there and talk to somebody on the other side of the country in 5 seconds, but it can be a little tricky because you don't have the visual cues of, the expression on that person's face or any of that. So I will sit and especially if I'm doing a criticism, I can sit there and type 4 paragraphs out not hit that send button, look at it, reread it. Oh no, like, could I possibly read this in a way that would piss me off? And if I can, I'm going to try to change it.
Yeah.
That's a big thing is understanding how people might possibly take what you're saying to them, even if it's not what you mean.
Yeah, because online you're broadcasting at them. You're like, especially if you're sending them a couple paragraphs of information, you're broadcasting a lot of stuff at them at once. So if it's not worded well, or if you're not getting your tone across correctly, it can put them on the defensive very quickly, because they're just getting these blocks of text that are not necessarily welcome information.
Sure. So, Nakis, we said conflict's inevitable. Is all conflict bad?
No. Conflict is simply two people who disagree, and that's how we create conversations. From any sort of disagreement, conflict, any sort of issue in which we're trying to become better, two people have different ideas for an event. They both may be good. We can mutate them, we can change them, as long as people are willing to communicate and work together. It's not, I'm right, you're wrong. It's, we both have something good, let's put them both on the table and see what we can make from it. And that's on the battlefield, that's in ANS. Whatever we have this conflict, as long as we come out ahead and work together, as opposed to work apart from each other. And that's where conflict behooves us rather than hinders us.
So, are there any warning signs whenever we've gone from it could be good conflict to bad conflict?
When you start seeing it's more, you did this, I'm doing this, when it becomes about yourself or each other. If you're accusing or you're trying to uplift yourself above the other person, that's when it's no longer about the team, it's about yourself or the other person. And that's when it becomes detrimental to the system.
So, Pharoah, without details, have you ever been in a conflict where you've been able to regain your ground and come out and work together?
That's almost a daily basis.
Yeah.
You're going to always have conflict. It's inevitable. As long as you're willing to grow from it and put whatever you need first and realize that you're not the most important person in the room. You may never be the most important person in the room, but just know that if we all sit here like we're doing now and trying to convey a message, we want to make sure that message is concise, and we want to make sure that message relays every ideal that we want to put out there. And we also want to make sure that conflict resolution creates a growth that pushes us to the next level, because stagnation kills. It's impossible. It's a death sentence. If I'm having an argument with Nakis and we're sitting there and we're contemplating, and I want to know that whatever we talk about furthers our goal, not hinders it. So if we're not ready to just let go of everything and just put our endeavor first, it's a death sentence.
Nakis, did you want to add something?
Pharoah hit it pretty well on the head.
So, all right, we're back in we're a productive team. Okay, we worked through our conflict, whatever our challenge was. Okay, and yay, we got back on track for whatever reason. How do I address that team member that they're failing? How do I, without we don't want to kick anybody while they're down. We don't know necessarily why they're struggling like they are. What are some steps I can do to get them back on track as a teammate? Yoshi?
I think one of the things is that if it's an issue where somebody is having a problem, and I think it's important to address it first in a more private setting. You obviously don't want to call somebody out in public or in a group of people. You have to think of kind of the audience that you're dealing with. So if it's somebody that is having an issue, I think kind of pulling them aside, begin the conversation privately and kind of broach the topic. Hey, this is going on. You seem like there might be some issues getting together on X, Y, or Z. Is there any assistance that you need? Is there anything that you need? What do you have going on that I can help with, or that another member of the team can help with to try and get you past this? If it's something that's particularly their responsibility, I mean, you have to try and gently dig deeper to try and find out sort of what's the kernel of the problem. Is it time? Is it just, they've got other things going out and besides Amtgard, stresses in their life, kind of not dig so deeply that it's personal, but kind of find out what's going on and if it's something that you can help them with.
Okay. Does anybody want to add to that? Pretty well rounded?
Yeah.
Okay. What about when you find out that problem is an out of game thing and they're bringing it out to park? Maybe it impacts other people at the park or whatever. What about whenever that issue and they're coming to work they're coming to park full of hate or anger, and that might be the challenge. What are some steps I can take there, Pharoah?
Number one, pull them to the side, because once again, you're going to put yourself in their shoes. Do you want to be called out in public? Do you want someone expressing your personal business in front of everyone? Nobody does. So have that common courtesy and respect, and ask them, is there anything that we can do to help you? Because here's your problem. This is what we perceive, and you might want to check yourself because you're creating a hostile environment. So get yourself together, take a deep breath, and then move on from there. And then once that's accomplished, if they still have a problem, I hate to do it, but I'm gonna ask you to step away. Because it's not about you anymore. It's about the preservation of the game for everybody else. You are not the shiny little tree. You're not the star in the sky. You're just there for the enjoyment of everyone.
Shyft, you want to add to that?
I think part of that kind of ties in with the idea of addressing a problem that a team member might have within the game. Sometimes you're going to come to that situation where you just aren't able to work together for some reason. Whether it's real life problems that they're having, they can't dedicate the time, or if there's an attitude problem there are going to be times when you have to say, I think it's better if you just step away, or maybe if I just step away from your project, or whatever it is. But I think the most important part of that is the follow-up. Not just saying, I need you to step off the field because you're creating a hostile work environment or field environment for us, and then just letting them go and never talk to them again. And if they don't show up, oh well. I think a big part of that is following up. I know we had a problem on field the other week, and I noticed you didn't come out last week. Is everything all right? The same with a team member. If you got to a point where they're dropping the ball too much, and you're like, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to replace you on the team. If I just replace you on the team and then I never talk to you again, that's a detriment to the whole community, because that person is then going to not feel like they're needed or wanted or whatever, and they're not going to put in that time helping out. So following up after a conflict, maybe you give it a couple of days, let people cool off, let it go back to kind of normal, and then follow up, see what they need, see if you can help maybe now that they're not so upset.
Can I throw in something real quick on that?
Please do.
The one thing that I want, we're kind of talking about two different messages here. One of them is talking with somebody about an issue where they might need some help or assistance. The other, we're kind of getting into an area where we might be talking about a disciplinary issue on the field. And one of the things that I want to suggest is I like talking to people privately, maybe one-on-one, about sort of disappointing issues. But in terms of disciplinary issues, I like to always have at least two officers going to somebody when you're talking to them, just so that if you both go, what was said, you've got a witness to what was said. If you're dealing with somebody with a bad attitude or sloughing on the field, those sorts of things. Because long time ago when I was a newbie, we had a champion go off with somebody to talk about them taking their hits properly, and then the person suggested that the champion had threatened them. Well, there were two people involved. It was nobody knew exactly what was said except the two people that were there. If you take another officer with you, you're protecting yourself in the park by doing that.
Yes.
That's the challenge, right? Because when is it, well, here's a witness, and no, it's four people that accosted me in a corner to shoot me out kind of deal, right?
Yep.
So the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, the knowing their shoes. Any team horror stories? Anybody wants to share?
Do we got time?
I'd like to
We
do
don't
a
need to go too
generic
deep
one,
in.
maybe a generic thing.
Yeah, I don't.
And
Please, I
this
don't know
happens
specifics, but
it's happened several times to me. I don't know how often it happens to everybody else. You've got your team. I tend to kind of micromanage sometimes. So I've been working with these people for a couple of months, working up, this is what I want the quest to be, and this is how we're going to handle the feast, and this is how we're going to do all of this stuff. And we get to like a week or two before the event, and 3 of these people just said, oh my gosh, my work just called, or my kid got sick, or something happened, and they're out. They can't come. And you know, you've spent a month or 2 already grooming these people for the position you want them to be doing in. Maybe not grooming, but working with them so that they know what you want, you know what they want, and now you've got to replace them. So that is I think, common horror story that happens a lot. We've got to kind of scramble and fill those positions. So I don't know if you know, that's the scenario if you guys want to talk about it.
no, and then all of a sudden you got new faces that may or may not have new perspective and new desires, and no, I could do this instead of that, even though everybody's agreed that action Y was what everybody was going to take, but all of a sudden they've got a new side, right? So all of a sudden you're resetting in a lot of ways. I think that's a hell of a conflict, especially at the last minute. Anything else anybody want to share?
Just working, the groups in the Virginia region were trying to form a principality. When I first took office, we had a bit of an issue in regards to communication. And that's going to happen from kingdom to kingdom, to park to kingdom. It always happens. One of the quickest ways we resolved this was simply starting the group chat. We had all the monarchs chat together. We had the principality monarchy get together and chat, all the monarchs within the principality chat. And what ended up happening, we resolved the issue in which we had one park that felt distant, left out constantly. And that was causing a conflict because we showed up here, but y'all didn't return the favor. And that starts a bad blood relationship, which had to be resolved. So at the end of the day, just pulling people onto the same page helped tamp down a lot of our problems. And that's just what it is. It's getting people to talk with each other that solves most of the problems. Because at the end of the day, if you get into a fist fight, you're not going to do anything. But when you sit, talk, understand where the other people are coming from, you have 4 entire groups that are willing to understand why this happened. Because a lot of time you just hear, I can't do this. Okay, why? Now that person's saying, well, I got called into work. I actually have a legitimate reason. It's not, screw you. It's not, I don't want to work with this person. It's, I have a legitimate reason. I can't do this. But here's my notes. Please get someone to work with them. Or I know my friend here, he can help you. And it's just getting that open level of communication that resolved a principality level sort of issue.
Okay. So sticking with the communication piece, Pharoah, Amtgard has a diverse leadership, or has a diverse team. We've got players that have been in an hour that are 15 years old, and we've got officers and company leadership and stuff like that. They're in their 70s.
Yeah.
As a communicator, a leader, team leader, whatever, how do I communicate with such a broad audience?
Clear, concise communication. Make sure nothing you say can be misconstrued, because perception and misconception are always your enemy. If I'm talking to him, I want to make sure that she understands exactly what I mean, so that she can't think that I'm telling him something different than what I'm telling her. If I'm talking to the people in the back, I want them to understand that you're not left out. You're just as important as the people standing in front of me. I am not here for myself. I'm here for all of you. And all of you are here for the game, and the game is what is important. And if you keep that mindset, you can't go wrong, no matter whether you have conflict or not. As long as you have that goal that I'm going to better the game for everyone, not just myself, but for everyone involved, you can't go wrong.
Shyft, any tips on communicating with a diverse audience?
Well, I think when it comes down to it, it's almost the same for everyone. You may use different words, but everyone wants to feel validated and appreciated You want to focus on what you know they do well when you're asking for help. If I know you're a great cook, but you don't really ever go out on the battlefield, and I ask you to reeve the tourney, that's kind of my fault. If you're if you're having an issue with that, why would I do that? Unless you do have some kind of experience with that. But just helping people to feel appreciated. I might appreciate something different about person A than person B, but at the core, it's the same thing.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add? Seems pretty good. Obviously a challenge. Again, whenever you're talking generational gaps and different perspectives, but like you said, learning to appreciate things from their perspective is important. It was touched on earlier a little bit about in-game actions and out of the enforcement side, if you will, or the counseling action, getting a leader to go with you to approach somebody. Are there any other Amtgard processes like code of conduct that you've had to use to just end conflict? And then we can at least agree on that. Things like code of conflict or code of conduct are, look, we're at an impasse, action has to be taken, and you are the issue, so you're going to be eliminated. But are there any other processes that you've used or to deal with conflict?
Individual counseling.
Counseling approach?
Yes.
Creating a positive atmosphere. Trying to, unless you want to remove the person from the field, trying to make it so if you have someone who's constantly talking about other people in a negative aspect and you're creating a toxic, or they're creating a toxic atmosphere, find a way to encourage the other people just to fix it themselves. Because if you allow that to breed, it just becomes a problem. Nip it in the bud by making that almost impossible with the kind of atmosphere you create at your park.
Sometimes things happen. Probably one of the more painful processes that we had to go through at one point in time was removing someone from office, going through the process of per our corpora, going through the all thing process of removing somebody from a leadership position because of personality conflicts and concerns about their ability to fulfill the obligations of office.
So on that, and I think as you move from team member to leader, or you get established in the game, especially as an officer, sometimes you don't get out of office, or you're always seen, whether you're an officer or not, you're always seen as a park leader.
There's such thing as out of office.
That's permanent.
This is a new idea.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you avoid getting a sense of entitlement? Well, I was the monarch, or I am a knight, or I am a leader amongst here, and people listen to me, even if it's an unofficial thing. Is entitlement an issue? And if so, how do we avoid it? And if not, we move on to the next question. Thoughts?
I agree that it can be an issue. There are people that either due to generic tenure, I've been in the game for 10, 15 years, and the other issue can be, somebody's like, I'm a knight, so I expect a certain level of respect for my ideas or what I'm doing. Those can certainly be issues. Dealing with them can be painful because a lot of these are deep-seated. Some of them are ego issues where, they want to feel important somewhere. They want to feel like they have some kind of control over this part of their life. Perhaps they don't have other things going on in their life that are going as well as maybe their Amtgard career. But I think a lot of it is trying to remain humble and also trying to focus on maybe the next generation, try and impart your wisdom onto the next group of people. You don't want robots, but you want to try and keep them from making the same mistakes that you've made, learn from your mistakes over the years, learn from the things that you've seen, and then let them kind of discover some things on their own. Because you give somebody a task sometimes and you don't tell them how to do it, you just give them a task, and the answer they come up with may surprise you, and it may be something new and exciting.
Okay. Does anybody want to add to that?
If you're not the monarch, let the current monarch be the monarch. That's what it boils down to, is if you're not in office, you can advise, but it's no longer your job. And you should, if people come to you saying, this isn't happening at park, have they discussed it with their monarch? Actually enforce people going to the proper officers at that time. And if the officers need help, they'll come to you because you are that experienced person. Enforce that separation of, I'm out of office. This is my recovery period. Let the actual officers do their job.
I'd imagine that can be a bit of a challenge and require, a lot of humility, because in a smaller park, everybody may have been monarch at one time or another, right? I think we've all played at a park like that where it's almost like a carousel, and somebody steps up, and that's good that other people are stepping up. But okay, 3 reigns ago you were monarch, and last reign you were that monarch, and now so everybody has a lot of that leadership experience and is used to that. So taking a step back and trusting in the people, having faith in the people, I can imagine take a good bit of humility and a challenge there. Do any of you make any special preparations for communicating? Okay, I'm going to sit down and do this Facebook announcement. Shyft, what runs through your head?
Well, first I kind of almost do it like I'm writing a paper, to be honest. I sit down and I type out kind of my rough draft, and I look back for spelling errors, and then I reread it as if I'm someone else that doesn't know what I'm talking about. And I really do try to put a lot of time in. Now, I don't always catch it. You'll see a lot of my things have edited underneath of them because I misspelled something or double typed a word or whatever. But I do try to make sure I'm, as Pharoah said, clearly conveying my message. I'm not always as concise as maybe I should be. But yeah, I really do try to look at it from a reader's perspective when I'm making an announcement. See if it makes sense even. Sometimes my stuff doesn't because I already know what I'm talking about. So I can be like referencing things that other people don't even have any clue. I do a lot of writing games and I get weird concepts for them sometimes. So sometimes I have to go back and completely rewrite it because I assumed someone would know something that they probably don't.
Okay, Nakis, how about you? Any battle rhythm or process that you go to before you do any specific to written communication?
It's more or less similar to Shyft's. It's write it down, walk away for a little bit, give it 30 minutes, come back to it, hand it to someone who doesn't know what we're talking about. Because you'll often have an issue and you're essentially communicating between two people. You're trying to let this person know, but you want everyone to hear it so they're aware. And sometimes that meaning can get lost. So if you have someone who's removed from the situation, read it. If it's to your own park members, have someone outside the park read it, because you have observers from all across the kingdom watching your posts. Have someone who's not involved read it, proofread it, make sure you're clear and concise.
Almost like responding to a layman. Somebody has no clue about your job, but you want to make sure that anything you put down is something that the average Joe can read, understand, and apply.
So Pharoah, the way that you put that, one of the tips that, or one of the reasons why you recommended for the panel was you take almost a learning hospital approach. I hear the way you train on something, you do it, and then you train somebody else on it.
Each one teach one.
So let's talk about that for just a moment. When do I know I'm ready to move to take on a leadership role as opposed to I hate to say but just be a team member?
Everyone at any point can be a leader. Sometimes it takes charisma, sometimes it just takes knowledge. But everybody at any point can be a leader. The point is, can you convey what you need to say to someone in a way that inspires? Because a leader should inspire. I'm not going to tell him something that he already knows, but I'm going to try to give him a new direction. I'm going to give him my point of view, and I'm going to listen to his. Because no leader is above himself. There was a Caesar that actually had someone follow him every day to tell him, you are just a man. That's all you are. You are no more special than anyone else.
How about anybody else? Anybody know when it's time to don that mantle of leader versus be a team member?
Well, for me, it was, there's kind of, I guess, maybe like a critical mass or a tipping point where I felt like, you know what? I know enough people that are good at enough things that I'm pretty sure I could get enough help to do this thing. That for me, that's what it was. It was about knowing that I had the support network to make things happen. And then I felt like, okay, I'm going to try, and we'll step up and we'll try to run this event or do a day thing or make a quest or whatever. But when you feel like you have that backup, because that's what it's all, you can't be a leader without a team. So when you know that, when you feel that you think you have enough support, I think that's when it's time to step up and go for it.
So on the panel, we have 4 articulate, seasoned leaders. What are some tips you give, Yoshi, to somebody that's looking to take on a leadership role for the first time?
First time leadership. I would say that communication is going to be key. Try and think about the audience that you're speaking to for a given message. Are you speaking to one person? Are you speaking to your group? Are you speaking to the kingdom? And then one of the other key things I think is to take your time. And a lot of times today, in these days, I'm getting older, showing some of my age here. Everybody expects sort of this rapid communication. Somebody shoots a Facebook message to you. It's like they expect it to be almost like instant messenger where you're going back and forth. And sometimes you need to kind of step back, take in the information or the questions that are asking. A lot of times people are asking questions of new monarchs that you may not know the answer off the top of your head. It might be a corpora question, it might be a rulebook question, it might just be a question on a topic that you're not sure of. Go find the answer before you give the answer. Because once you start giving out bad information or wrong information, then you have to try and track down everybody that heard this bad information. It's out of the bottle. Genie's out of the bottle. So try and be correct as much as possible the first time. And if you're not correct, apologize, accept that you've passed out this bad information, and try and correct it. Be honest, be concise with people, and let them know that, hey, I screwed up. This is what I should have said. And then try and move past that.
Now, because that's difficult, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people, don't we inherently want to be the person in the know that has the answer?
We always do. It's a good feeling, but there will always be a point in time when you have to realize you need to step back, listen to your words, and realize that they're right. You can't be right all the time. And it's a learning experience that everyone will have to go through. And it's not a pleasant one.
So I want to focus on you just for a couple moments before we have to wrap things up. So the vote went counter to the desire of many players within the principality. I mean, that's a lot of challenges. I mean, a lot of people were invested in that, spent a lot of time, were very, had goals, and it got delayed. Personally, I think delayed is the right word to use. It got delayed for a little bit. Any specific leadership, teamwork, communication challenges that you guys had to work through or are still working through?
People's expectations, communication. Some people expected within X amount of time we'll just be given it. People were expecting a lot. It's just, there was a lot of expectations that just weren't met. Some people felt slighted from the kingdom level down here because there was a lack of communication that it felt like a lot of people were jumping through hoops when they really weren't. They were doing what they were supposed to do. So it's the misperception that helped fuel the discontent a little bit, if I could say that. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it went on for too long, and people just felt burnt out. And once people start burning out, you start to lash out, you get acidic. And that happened to me too, honestly. And it's realizing that the principality, as you said, it's delayed. It's not dead. People have come forward. It's grown leaps and leaps and bounds. But they haven't lost anything. They've only gained. You have people who stepped forward. You had leaders come from the fire and become something more than they were before. And you also had a few people who, they weren't ready. And now people have seen that they weren't ready, and now they know where to refine themselves. So the principality having the downvote isn't a bad thing. It's just take 6 months, take a year, rest, relax, recover from your burnout, and then when you go at it again, You know where we misstepped, how to do it again, and we know where to get that help. And that's the communication within ourselves, is understanding where we messed up, how we did it good, and how can we make it greater next time.
There's some great insight. So as we start to wrap things up, what I'm just going to ask is that each of you, we'll start Pharoah with you, but if there's any last minute foot stomps or tidbits we weren't able to get out, but what are the takeaways that you hope that the audience here in the room or the audience that's watching from home on our YouTube channel, what are the key takeaway that you hope that people got out of this last hour you spent with us?
Never be afraid to say, I don't know. Let them know. I don't know the answer to that, but as Yoshi said, I will find out. And if I cannot, I'm going to point you in the direction of somebody who does know. You don't have to be the most important person there. Realize that I don't know everything. But that's why we, all of us as a team, will give you the answer that you need. That's bottom line.
Nakis?
Listening. A good leader listens. You don't always have to agree with them. As Sir Yoshi said, make sure that they understand you're listening to them. And just open your mouth and talk with them. It's not a debate. It's not an argument. It's one man talking to another, woman talking to another person. You're listening, you're talking, it's an exchange of ideas.
Yoshi?
I like their points. But I'd also like to throw out the idea that there may be times when you need to look outside your current group. If you're having conflict issues, you may need to find a neutral outside broker that can help mediate the situation. Whether that, if it's a group level, you might be able to talk to a kingdom officer or something like that. So don't just look inside yourselves and inside your group. Sometimes there may be something that you don't know or insights that you can get from someone else coming in and looking at the situation.
Okay. Shyft?
My takeaway thing would be adding on a little bit to the advice for maybe new leadership people that are trying to build teams or run things, and that is, don't get upset when it doesn't go the way you planned, because it never will. As long as people had a good time at your event or at your field that day, you won. That's a simple, you might have done 25% of the stuff that you wanted to happen, but if people had a good time, it's a win. And if they didn't, tell them you're sorry, and now you know what to do different next time. I think that makes all the difference.
Sure, it almost seems like, okay, was the important thing that your quest or your event went off the way you wanted it to, or that everybody there had a good time? And if it's more, I think Pharoah said, if it's more about you getting what you wanted, that perspective shift was important. So I think it's a great way to wrap things up. Well, gentlemen, thank you all for spending some of your time today. Luckily for you, I think lunch is about to be served. So congratulations. But in all seriousness, thank you so very much for spending some time with us. I found it very valuable, and there's no doubt in my mind that those in attendance and those that will watch online will find it valuable too. So again, thank you. And if I could, a quick round of applause.